we start with this. This is going to become what we call the unit circle. If you remember, we had an equation for the unit circle, and the equation for the unit circle was, or equation for a circle was x squared plus y squared is equal to r squared. The reason why it's called the unit circle is the radius is 1. And if the radius is 1, it becomes x squared plus y squared is equal to 1. So the first challenge. This is the center. This is a circle of radius 1. This is the y-axis. This is the x-axis. Can somebody tell me that coordinate right there? Close. Coordinate, I'm looking for an x value and a y value. This is 0, 0. We'll try again. It's the unit circle. The radius is 1. So how far is it from here to here? 1 unit, okay? So what's the x value? 1. What is the y value? 0. Can everybody convince themselves that that is 1, 0? No? Let's try another one, see if you could convince yourself of this. I'm going to move to this spot on the circle. Can somebody tell me that coordinate? 0, 1. Good work. You all good? Can somebody tell me this coordinate here? -1, 0. Moyer, you are a genius. Jake, stop laughing. We were serious about that. I think you guys should wrestle. Okay. How about this coordinate right here? 0, -1. Is everybody okay with those 4? Okay, good job. I'm now going to do something else. Okay. This is 0 degrees, and that's the same as 0 radians. Yesterday, we learned about degrees and radians. A for the day. Who remembers how many radians there are in 180 degrees? A little bit over 3. A little over 3. What's the number just a little bit more than pi? Yeah. There are exactly pi radians, or 3.14 radians, in 180 degrees. That's the basis of what we were taught yesterday. Yesterday, we started with this. We said if you have 100 degrees, convert it to radians. And we multiply by pi over 180. Remember that? And we got 100 pi over 180. And we canceled the zeros. And we said it's 5 pi over 9. And we said, hey, we've got a radian measurement. Pi and 180 go together. So think about that. And I know that fractions aren't always your friend. We're going to try to make them your friend today. If there are pi radians in 180 degrees, how many are there in 360 degrees? What? 2 pi. if there are pi radians in 180 degrees, there will be twice as many in 360 degrees. Everybody agreed? Okay, let's start to build the rest of them. You guys look like you're catching on. Suppose I divide it in half and I go to 90 degrees. How many radians would there be? Half of a pi. And we write that as pi over 2. Are you okay with that? So what we know is this. 90 degrees is pi over 2. 1 pi over 2. Every time you go around 90 degrees, that's pi over 2. So watch me, folks. Watch how this works. I'm just going to count. This is 1 pi over 2. This would be 2 pi over 2. This would be 3 pi over 2. Try it again. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Watch, it's going to make sense here. I'm going to do it again. 1 pi over 2, 2 pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Hey, 4 pi over 2. Isn't that the same thing as? See how I was able to count those 90-degree sections as pi over 2s? So we want to start to make that connection. Trust me, I've done this many years. I'm going to help make it work for you, okay? So we got our 90-degree markings worked out. We're going to move to a different degree marking instead this time, okay? We're going to move to half of 90. What's half of 90? Hey, I'm going to move to 45 degrees. I like that. I want to come up with the radian measurement, okay? I've got 45 degrees. Well, that's half of pi over 2. What's half of pi over 2? What's half of a half? A fourth. So half of pi over 2 is going to be pi over 4. Okay, we're going to count now, but I'm going to need your help. We have 45 degrees. If I add 45 to 45, I get 90. If I add 45 more, I get 135 degrees. If I add 45 more, I get 180. 45 more, and I get 225. 45 more, and I get 45 more, and I get 45 more, and I get good. You see that? Okay, here we go. We're going to count 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4 is the same as pi, right? Then 5 pi over 4. Then 6 pi over 4, which is 3 pi over 2. Then 8 pi over 4, which is Isaac said is 2 pi. Question. The 4. Watch. You ready? See how I got pi over 2? So what is pi over 2 divided in half? What's pi over 2 divided by 2? How do you divide? Multiply by the reciprocal, and you get pi over 4. Better? Okay. All right. I'm going to move on from the pi over 4s. I'm going to move to something else. I'm going to move to this mark right here. I'm going to move to 30 degrees. I'm going to help you think of it in a different way. How many 30 degrees fit in 180 degrees? 6 of them, right? So if 180 is pi, then 30 degrees would be pi over 6. It's 1/6 of 180 degrees, right? So I'm going to go up by 30 degrees every time and see where I get. So I got 30, then I'll have 60, then 90, 120, 150, 180, 210, 240, 270, 300, 330, 360. You guys are doing good. You're doing good. Hang in there. Keep working through it. Anybody ever take a foreign language before? Okay. All right. So, Mia, what's your foreign language class? Spanish. Okay. Give me a verb in Spanish. Comer. What does that mean? Great. I'm hungry. Okay. So, did it take a while before you learned how to conjugate that verb? Yeah, it took a while, right? And it took a while before you knew what all the verbs meant, right? You had to kind of memorize some of the, the vocabulary and some of the conjugations. And the same kind of process is going to happen here. But I'm going to show you guys a trick here in just a little bit. Just get through this next step, and then I'll show you a trick. You like tricks, right? Okay, I'm going to show you the trick. The first. 1 pi over 6. 2 pi over 6, which reduces to, yeah, pi over 3. 2 pi over 6 is the same as pi over 3, right? Okay, let's count. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, which is 2 pi over 3. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6. After 5 pi over 6 is 6 pi over 6, or 6 pi. After that is 7 pi over 6. After that is, or 4 pi over 3. After 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6. After 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, which is 5 pi over 3. After 5 pi over, or 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6. If you ever get confused, you can start back here, just 30 degrees. Watch again. 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, 11 pi over 6, 12 pi over 6, which is the same as 2 pi. See how I'm counting? Now, this is beautiful, and I'm going to show you how it works. So that's where we're going to end our lesson right now as we practice all of those. But what I want you to know is that tomorrow, do you see how we have these coordinates up here? We've got 1, 0. We've got 0, 1. We've got -1, 0. We've got 0, -1. What we want to do is we want to find the coordinates for all of these points as well. The first step was being able to convert between degrees and radians, and you guys have shown that you're able to do that. Some of you need your calculator, some of you don't. But we want to be able to figure out those positions, and that's where the second piece comes in. So, we okay to take a break then? You guys had fun? Okay, very good. See you tomorrow.